Well, very good morning, everyone. Sometimes I feel like, when you starting to speak on a conference like this, everybody has the same theme. So if there is a repetition, I apologize for that in advance. But the topic is very, very interesting in a sense that as a healthcare industry, we are slowly moving away from what I call as a sick care to more preventative care. While what really looks like, all this while, um, science fiction, as was told by earlier our host, and it actually looked like science fiction some 10 years ago, is actually becoming a reality on a day in and day out basis. Healthcare, as we all know, is continuous, not episodic, is holistic, not only one particular angle of well-being, but various other angles of well-being, and also is hyper-personalized. Now, all these three elements we have never been able to actually accomplish because of the technologies at hand and how the data used to be organized. But I think it is slowly becoming a reality. We are actually looking at an era where healthcare is actually becoming continuous, and it is becoming more wholesome, and you're able to take into account a lot more number of dimensions. Now, if I may have to basically talk about what happened in April of 2026, one of the science study found that LLMs outperformed physician baseline across 5 clinical reasoning experiments, including the real-world emergency department second opinion. Now, that is not something which is fiction. This has actually happened in April of 2026. Also, we are at a threshold point where the large language models are going to continue to outperform many of these particular specialized areas, as we say it. But I think there is also an honest conversation that we need to have. Many a times physicians, would probably have a particular opinion, but I think as patients, sometimes we over-rely on the AI models as if like they're giving us the right information, because the AI model sometimes lies so confidently that it becomes very difficult to figure out what is right or what is wrong. But I think I want to reframe this particular question now. It's not a question of, will this reshape how the care is delivered and consumed? I think that's not a debate anymore. That is something that we have already kind of moved past that particular debate. But I think the question is that who builds the infrastructure that will make the transformation trustworthy and scalable? Are we that hospital to do that? Let's also look at where the LLMs of today really live. I think we all talk about, and the previous speaker definitely talked about ambient listening and ambient scribing. This is actually becoming a reality, and most of the hospitals, if not in India, in the West, have already started to use it. We are already seeing a lot of crisis of physician burnout, and hence this particular administrative cost takeaway is absolutely, entertained in the hospital system. Now, clinical LLMs are fundamentally also acting as ambient scribes. They listen to the patient-doctor conversation, take away the noise from whatever is happening, and absolutely get the data into a more structured form, which lends itself further to analytical modeling. And that actually where the prediction and other things basically lie. Now, healthcare systems are also using LLMs to translate a lot of a complex jargon that goes into medical summaries in order to make it more readable, understandable for the people who receive these discharge summaries. And they're able to rapidly extract structured data from decades of unstructured and messy medical histories. So we are no longer just storing data, we are actually conversing it with now. However, we had to make a very balanced case. I saw my previous speaker also talk about this, but there is a clinical tightrope that we need to walk. There is definitely a risk in terms of LLMs generating, false information with extreme confidence, as I said. But also, one of the things that it is able to do is democratization of medical knowledge. A massive time saving and the ability to scale expert level insights to a lot of rural and underserved communities. Now, introducing generative AI in a life or death environment is not easy. And this is where we will delve into the case that how we are going to basically look at LLMs of the future, where we are able to look at some of the international regulations, whether they are HIPAA or whether they are even the DPDP Act of India. So the risk of really this perpetuating bias is something that needs to be addressed. Furthermore, I think also there is one more risk that people don't talk about, is really the psychological risk of what I call as automation complacency, which is really about the fatigued physician actually relying completely on AI and taking a decision. And that is the reason why human in the loop is something that we cannot ignore. A lot of people are now talking about human on the loop, human in the loop, human outside the loop, but the human is absolutely necessary. That would be required. So the golden rule is like human in the loop, AI proposes, and the clinician decides what is the best thing to do. Now, what is the art of the possible? We've seen some of these unimodal ways of working with the LLMs, but I particularly believe that the future is really about clinical transformation, not only about taking away some of the administrative burden and bringing more administrative efficiencies. I think that is something that we have already kind of moved forward with. So the future of clinical LLMs, in my mind, is multimodal. Now imagine an LLM that doesn't just read text, but simultaneously analyze a lot of information coming from the wearable data, streams of information that comes from multiple different social determinants of health, MRI data, data from longitudinal records of this particular patient. And then synthesizes this into a more personalized and predictive care plan. That's where the future of LLM is. Now, for the surgeons in the audience, I think one of the use case that is very intriguing is imagine an ambient surgical assistant during a complex procedure. Your LLM has actually consumed and ingested a whole lot of information with regard to many, many medical procedures. And for any kind of a complexity or a complication that arises during the surgery, just imagine that AI instantly surfaces the most recent, the most relevant ones, or the peer-reviewed mitigation strategies, and displays that on the head, a heads-up display for the surgeon. That's an amazing thing for the surgeon, and get a surgical assistance in order to solve some of the complex problems. We are also moving more towards agentic workflows, where LLMs doesn't just suggest a follow-up, but is also autonomously navigating the complex healthcare system or the hospital system, not only booking an appointment, but also basically looking at standard care guidelines and also suggesting what are the various clinical or lab tests and other things that needs to be basically performed based on the critical condition or the medical condition of the patient. So we're shifting more from a predictive AI to a more proactive, autonomous clinical agents. Now, where the real prize really lies is really in the precision medicine. Currently, if you see, fewer than half of the cancer patients currently benefit from the genomic-guided precision medicine. Now, the bottleneck is not really biological. It is the ability to synthesize and act on the data at scale. That's exactly where LLMs really come in very, very handy. Molecular tumor boards, they get very overwhelmed by the manual literature that they had to go through. But LLMs can really synthesize a lot of mutation profiles, drug interactions, trial eligibility simultaneously at scale in order to provide the right decision support system. So I particularly believe that in oncology, there is a lot of scope in this. Cardiology, there's a lot of scope in this. And also, LLM-based systems can forecast individual patient health trajectories. And I think this is where my previous speaker also basically talked about what we call as like the digital twins, where you can actually run these particular simulations in thousands in order to really predict what's going to happen to the physiology of a human being. In the interest of time, I'm going to rush. There are a couple of more slides. I want to talk a little bit more about that while we are actually talking about a beautiful car, but I think we need to first fix the chassis. And this is very, very important. Many of the hospitals, and many times when I speak with many of my colleagues on the hospital side, they talk about, where do we really start, Manoj? And I particularly believe that you have to, in order to build this particular future of today, you have to start really at your data infrastructure. Unless and until you really have your data infrastructure in place, it'll be very, very difficult to get the right kind of insights from siloed information. So LLMs are only as good as the data that they are trained on or they consume. Unstructured data must be brought in a manner that lends itself to specific ways of how you want to do analytics on top of it, draw actionable insights, which can actually provide you information on the next best actions and so on and so forth. Interoperability, huge, huge challenge, not only on the West side, I think it is also a huge challenge here in India. And we got to basically get our interoperability right. Health information exchanges, health insurance exchanges, regional health information exchanges, all are going to be very, very important and your internal systems, how they actually interact with peer-to-peer, peer-to-provider, and peer-to-patient are also going to be very, very important to fix. The next big thing is really about clinical governance. And unless and until you have a rigorous AI governance, now many a times I'm sure that a lot of people who are either technologists or sitting in the hospital space must be thinking that, we dabble with AI every day. We have like 30 use cases that we have worked on. But heart and heart, all those use cases are still lying on the shelf. Not many of them have actually made it to the production. And that's where your governance has to play a very, very important role. Benchmarking models against local populations, whether it is medical AI ethics committee that you have in place, and rigorous stress testing for the edge cases in order to make sure that you understand where they fail. Culture, needless to say, very important. AI literacy is very important. Training the staff on prompt engineering, training the staff on interpreting the results, and also I think it's high time that in our medical education we start introducing all of these particular concepts. So building the trust through transparency, explainability, responsible AI is going to be very, very important. Now, why only LLMs? I think there is another breed which has actually proven its worth very, very well. Now, when we talk about deploying these particular models, hospital CIOs and administrators are also very, very cautious about the cost that it's going to, the token economy is actually taking away most of the shine from these particular models. And that's where I believe that we can actually look at small language models that can actually answer some of the data privacy, ultra low latency, cost reduction, a precision on domain, and then also provide offline capabilities. So in conclusion, I would say there's a collaborative future. The future isn't about, as everybody said, replacing doctors. If the doctor's using AI, replacing those who don't. So clinical LLMs are here to stay. And as we talked about convergence as well as multimodal LLMs that are going to rule the roost. And the cost of interaction, the cost of inaction, if we don't do anything at this point in time, I think the cost of inaction is very, very high. So human empathy plus AI processing power is to a more equitable and a more precise global healthcare system. So thank you very much. I open it up for any questions that you might have.
A very good presentation. From a clinician point of view, the major application of the major issues, the AI hallucinations. Is it any possibility of creating these LLMs with a minimal AI hallucinations?
It is actually. So there are concepts of fine-tuning the model, as well as also when you move towards more small language models and more domain-specific models, you can actually reduce that particular hallucination to quite an extent.
You mean to say that today we have to change the pattern of NEET examination from 10th standard onwards? When they come to the MBBS, what should be? Shall we forget about all the biology, which we gave more important, biology is the king, especially as an oncologist.
Yeah.
Then we
No, you're
told
so
them-
right.
So where do we stand? Do you thought about all these things
Yes.
for the future doctors? As old teachers, clinicians, we are taught enough.
Yeah.
Now what should be the pattern of medical education,
Yeah.
curriculum development? I have a thought on these models so that when we talk like this, it looks good. When it comes to the patient there, whatever taught people are not bothered to look at it.
Yeah.
Where do we stand in these circumstances?
Yeah.
Most important thing
I,
is
I would
how
love to
to
discuss
try
this
the-
with you, but would answer it in one particular statement. While we modernize India, I think our foundation capabilities and the culture and the heritage we don't let go. So I don't think that just learning of these particular new technologies are going to really help. I think the foundation capabilities are the core. The empathy is the core. The knowledge is the core. I think, again, these are more assisted technologies at this point in time that I would say. While I know that Khosla Venture, Mr. Khosla actually predicted in 2010 that doctors won't be required in 2020, here we are in 2026. Nothing much has changed.
Thank you.